should. And yeah, we just thought it was a really good pair. So for instance, if you take a wee look here at our two agitator casks, the artwork for these bottles was by an artist named Phoebe Phillips. So what we do is we send a sample, a description of the liquid, the distillery, and that's about it. You allow the artist to come up with whatever artwork they see fit, and they send it over and we put it on the bottle. So in this case here, you'll see this is kind of nice, kind of space-themed artwork, similar in how they look, but slightly different, obviously, illustrations. And that's because Phoebe said this liquid was out of this world. And that's why she chose this artwork. So yeah, without further ado, we'll be starting off. So you guys will be your left dram to your furthest left, and that'll be the Swedish 4. That is this one here. Please, guys, feel free to pass the bottle around if you want. We don't know if you guys have seen it yet. But yeah, please feel free to take a close look. So this cask was filled in 2018. So that was the first year that Agitator began distilling. So Agitator is located 150 kilometers from Stockholm in Sweden. And they began distilling with the ethos that the best whiskey was yet to be made. A very bold statement. But after we got sent the samples around midsummer last year, we can see why they're pursuing that perceived vacant title. It's amazing liquid. The stuff that they do there is phenomenal. One of the things they like to, one of their sort of core ethos is protecting the environment. So they use renewable energy. But one of the things that they do is vacuum distillation. So vacuum distillation is exactly how it sounds. You're distilling within a vacuum. Now they do this for two reasons. Number one, as I say, they're environmentally conscious, being the contemporary distillery that they are. So vacuum distillation uses less energy. You don't have to heat the wash up as much for it to distill. However, some of the other benefits of vacuum distillation is you don't need to heat the wash up as much. So you don't get that ethanol taste when the spirit's still quite young, because you don't have to create that ethanol taste nearly as much. And you also keep quite a lot of the flavors from the wash, because you're not heating it up, you're not abusing that spirit at its early stages. Obviously, Agitator double that up with using quite cool casks. So although they maybe don't even need to, they could release that spirit quite young, but they use quite cool cask type to kind of double it on their goal of being the best whiskey in the world, which I wish them luck. I think they're an amazing start. So this, you'll notice, a super, super sweet whiskey. It's buttery, it's caramelly, almost creme brulee, slight cedarwood in there. So it's a great one to start tastings off. It's also a really nice one to go with, after your dinner, with a dessert, almost replacing a dessert wine. And that, I think, comes from the fact it's a grain spirit, so it's really, really sweet, but also the fact it's been matured in a white port wine cask. Only 2 years in a white port wine. It was originally filled into a virgin American oak barrel, and then it finished off its life in white port wine. So it's not too overpowering on those porty notes, but you're getting some of that fruit sweets coming through.
What's the ABV?
The ABV, good question. So the ABV of this specific release is 58.6. So quite dangerous in this dram, I think, because it doesn't taste like something that's close to 60%.
Yeah.
And I say that from experience. Yeah, you could knock a few back before you realise it's strong. We've had it described to us. We do quite a lot of these festivals and go around and try and sample some of these bottles. And this is most commonly described as a breakfast whiskey. We don't advocate people drinking whiskey for breakfast, but we can see what they mean. It probably would go quite well with porridge. But yeah, this is one of only 315 bottles, slightly higher output than the other drams we have here today.
I'm thinking about the cheese with that one.
Yeah, that's one of the things we're comparing with the cheese board at the end.
Yeah.
So you can easily have this as like an aperitif, but it would go really well with a cheese board. But you'll notice as well, if you give it a little swirl and you hold it up,
It's really sticky.
really, really sticky. Personally, I really like an oily mouthfeel in my whiskies.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Oh.
Well, ask me, sure.
practice that we're up to.
Okay, I would always recommend, drink whichever you want, but I do always recommend with these samples, try them first, there's nothing added to it, and then increasingly adding a few drops of water and just seeing how that spirit comes out.
Changes.
It can get completely. And I do feel sometimes you want to add water to kind of lower that ethanoliness, but obviously because that ethanoliness isn't really here in that whiskey, it kind of opens up the flavours a wee bit more, and you can taste some of those components. Really, really easy to drink.
Colin been getting through for a prostate cancer. He's okay.
We do also have at the bottom there, it's buttery fudge.
Okay.
So we thought that paired quite well. It's sort of like a buttery caramel. It still feels like it's just there.
No worries.
What's everyone think?
It's excellent. Yeah.
So obviously, as I say, this is from Caskshare Distillery as well as the chestnut here. But you'll notice when we get onto that one, very different. Similar mouthfeel, same kind of oily nature to the spirit, but it's night and day. You almost can taste it on the spirit.
First whiskey from that distillery.
Where is it?
It's Sweden, so it's just about 150 kilometres northwest of Stockholm. I'm trying to pitch them up.
Yes.
But it's brand new. Actually, up until a couple of weeks ago, we were the only distributor of Caskshare here in the UK. They're a really new distillery. They were founded in 2015, but didn't start since 2018. And also trying to break into the quite saturated UK market is something that they're just going to get around to. Basically because, they've been mature, so this is just them starting to bottle whiskey.
I don't think this was my last drink, but actually. So.
Yeah, no, it is really Moorish. It is, it's dangerously Moorish.
We're still the only indie bottler of Agitator as well on the market, which is great. They're bringing a lot of their stuff in their own bottles to the UK, but they've trusted us with doing it as an indie bottling partnership, which is really fantastic.
Yeah, no.
And they've been great partners, and one of them has just won an award. But I'll let you and
Oh, of course.
I'll let you and carry that on.
That's a really good point. So when we get on to the chestnut cask, we found out about 10 days ago that it actually won the Spirits Business Blind Tasting Award. Well, sorry, I came second in the Spirits Business Blind. We won silver award.
Do the colours represent anything on the neck or part of the brand?
We'll try and choose colours that will complement the colour of the actual liquid. So we feel as we kind of got it quite nice for these ones here. Obviously, it's not going to work 100% of the time, in which case we'll emulate the art. So it's kind of somewhere in between. But again, they are often, as I say, the artists receive samples, and then in their artistic nature, they'll kind of have an eye to kind of make sure what they design is similar to the colour of the liquid.
I can't believe how smooth it is for only being 4 years.
Yeah, it's the vacuum distillation. It is. It just, you're just not getting that rawness that some of these other whiskies have. And there's some distilleries that create amazing new make. Like back in the day, new make wasn't really considered something that they would take a lot of care of, because everything was getting aged. That was 12 years. So it was all kind of cask type, fermentation times, and that was kind of it. But that was mainly almost kind of like, we're going to be like a space side whiskey, so we'll kind of have like short fermentation times and vice versa. But yeah, it's just the amount of flavour you're packing in to that new make spirit. Because some of the newer distilleries, don't get me wrong, they're making really, really nice new make with traditional distillation. Hollywood Distillery is one that jumps to mind. They're selling a new make. Isle Rasi is another one that jumps to mind. You know, they just take a lot of care in that sort of initial process, which some of the newer distilleries are going to do, because they're realising that is a nice way to create really good taste in the younger spirit. But none of them are doing vacuum distillation, and you can kind of just tell the difference. You're just not getting that same oiliness, and it's not as offensive as a younger spirit. And again, if you're to kind of look at the chestnut cask here, so 4 years old, and this is 14 years old from Dahlia.
Yeah.
So you can tell that there's definitely a difference there.
They're all non-chill filtered, no colour added.
Non-chill filtered, no colour added, bottled at cask strength. Yeah. But it's quite impressive. And it's not just the vacuum distillation for the chestnut. Chestnut's quite a soft wood, so you're getting quite a lot of flavours coming through quite quickly from that. But it just goes to show, you take a little bit of extra care in those earlier stages, you can create some phenomenal whiskies.
Well done,
Yeah. Do you guys want to move on to the Dahlia?
Sure. Let's go for it.
So up next is our 14-year-old Daoyun. So this spent the beginning of its life in a sherry cask, and then it was re-wrapped into an ex-bourbon cask. So this is the dram second to your left. Quite an unusual way to do that. Traditionally, you maybe get 11 years in an ex-bourbon and then finishing in a sherry. But I would like to think they did that to create the flavour profile that you're going to experience in a wee second, which is subtle sherry and subtle bourbon. So quite often I do really like a sherry finished whiskey, but quite often it's quite overpoweringly sherried. It almost kind of tastes like you're drinking a sherry. Yeah, which is fine. Sherry's nice, but sometimes you kind of want to taste the whiskey, and it's nice to have those notes in there, but not necessarily only kind of taste sherry. So as I say, finishing an ex-bourbon, so you're getting notes of caramel, getting notes of vanilla, and they complement perfectly, in my opinion, with the sort of raisiny, stone fruit notes that you're getting from its time in a sherry. So the artwork for this bottle was done by a Scottish artist called Evie Grace. She now lives down in Bristol, but we sent her a sample and we also told her about Daoyun. So it's kind of different to the agitator illustrations. Also being a traditional Scottish, an old traditional Scottish distillery. Evie wanted to represent the history of Scotland, and that is kind of what she wanted to focus on more than the flavour of the whiskey. So it's a nighttime bothy. Again, she felt as though being outdoors, being in the Highlands was, part and parcel with drinking whiskey. Obviously a bothy, bringing people together, community, sharing good times with strangers, that kind of vibe. That is kind of why she wanted to include that. And finally, you'll notice there's sort of these mermaids at the front, and that is to represent sort of mythical nature of whiskey, especially here in Scotland. We don't really perceive it as a drink. We perceive it as something a bit more. There's a romance to it, and she wanted to kind of summarise that in her artwork.
I think it's got brandy note to it.
A wee bit, yeah, it does. And I think, again, it's just from that short period of time in a sherry cask, and in fact, then finish the rest of its life in an ex-bourbon. So anything that's too overpowering kind of obviously came away.
You get a vanilla up front, and then vanilla's very up front, and you're getting a sort of deeper.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, lingering kind of nice fruitier aftertaste.
Yeah, I completely agree. And on the nose, it's very sherried. But you're right, the first sip doesn't really almost taste of sherry whiskey, but then it kind of comes through towards the end. And again, this bottle was
Which is very good.
it's really good. So when we first kind of had it, we're like, finishing in an ex-bourbon cask. It was really kind of strange. And then we kind of tried it, we're like, okay, I think you can see what we're trying to do.
There's a lot of apple on there as well. Like when we tasted it, we were like very apples and custard, because you got that kind of creaminess from the ex-bourbon cask, and then that kind of sharp apple where, as Ewan says, like very vanilla on the nose, but then you get the citrus element to it, that kind of like lemon meets apple orchard fruit kind of thing.
Completely, yeah. Which again, I think is coming from the fact it's a space like unique, those both of these casks. So again, you're getting those kind of like apple pie, kind of those, pear drops.
It's very Jolly Rancher.
Yeah, I do
Yes.
know what you mean about that. Like
Like it's fruity, but it's like Jolly Rancher.
It's-
fruity.
it's-
I know exactly what you mean.
it's like artificial sweetness almost, but not in an off-putting way. Like or apple thing. Do you know like rhubarb and custard sweets, like from the corner shop?
It kind of
that kind
reminds
of
me a little
thing,
bit of in that same way the Ben Rinnes, the 13-year-old Ben Rinnes that we had.
Yeah.
It tasted and smelled like Harrington straws.
Mhm.
It was like,
Absolutely.
yeah, it was like that almost like artificial strawberry kind of flavour in a good way. Like, it was really nice and it went really well with the dram. But
And what's the ABV?
so the ABV on this is, I think this is actually the lowest ABV for today, which is 56.5. And I say the lowest, I don't mean necessarily overly low. Yeah. But again, this cask yielded 216 bottles. So again, a slightly lower outturn than the white gold wine cask.
What food pairing goes with this one?
So the ones we have here today, I would recommend the white chocolate with forest fruits. But in general, I think you could probably pair it with maybe like a crankin or something like sort of fruity dessert, like a trifle, that kind of area. But I can also see this kind of working quite well as well, maybe like a post lunch dram, something again that's quite light, something that you can drink quite frequently.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
It's interesting seeing what's coming through. So like people are saying a bit of a brassy, savoury note, or like very creamy on the nose. So like all tasting a lot of the same things. I'm all right, don't worry. I'm not supposed to be talking. Does anybody else get savoury from that dram?
Yeah,
Mm.
definitely. I've got like a, I don't know, like a Jack Daniels sauce type.
Yeah, no, okay, I know what you mean. Like sweet meets savoury.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, please, anyone tuning in live, feel free to ask any questions that you have, and email shout them out, and we're happy to answer them. And yeah, you can tweet along or give us your tasting notes, and we can, if there's any cool, interesting ones in there, we'll happily read them out.
Cheese.
Give us a wee drop of water.
Yeah, that's no trouble.
It does it, it really opens it up, and it is, I think, because all of them are quite, for a space it's quite oily. I wouldn't say it's an overly oily whiskey, especially when you just come off like the white port wine, which is really oily. But as far as spaces goes, quite oily, and I think the more oily the spirit, the more that water just kind of interacts with those oils and opens up. That's a really nice one.
Cracker. I think that's really nice. I think I can feel that one.
The original,
So far,
the agitator.
I like this one better than that one. That one was really nice. But this one's just got a bit more bite to it.
Yeah.
It does. It's got a bit more like heart to it, I think.
Smoky, for want of a better expression.
I know, yeah. No, completely.
It's certainly no peaty by any stretch.
And it's definitely much more traditional Scottish whiskey. You know, if that's kind of, that's generally what you go for. Like it's definitely sums up really well. I do quite enjoy how Agitator don't try and emulate Scottish whiskey like some of the newer distilleries would do, because I mean they're unbound by SWA. Like they don't need to abide by the same restrictions we have.
Yeah.
And again, you'll notice this when we get off the chestnut cask, like it's stuff that we just can't do, and they do it just so well. And I think they should experiment, but we still can't experiment. I'd like to see some of the restrictions loosen up over the next few years. But yeah, I do enjoy it. Actually, I can do things a little bit different to the traditional Scottish distilling methods. However, if it's whiskey or Scotch whiskies, the Dahlia's crack. Because it's just that kind of more traditional Scotch whiskey.
Do you guys often favour like New World whiskey, or is it like predominantly Scotch, or?
Mostly Scotch.
Yeah.
Mostly.
But open-minded maybe
Yeah,
to
sure.
that's a great thing. I'm just curious.
Yeah, the Breton malt was just not that long ago finished, which was nice. Picked up across there.
It's something I think has a stigma, and it definitely is kind of wearing away. This idea if you want whiskey, it has to be Scottish whiskey. And I definitely myself 5 years ago, I wouldn't even, even bourbons and stuff like that is something I wouldn't really go near. But, the more kind of you try, and you kind of do realise that some of these other countries come out with some unbelievable spirit.
Yeah.
Like some of these English distilleries.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's a few that spring to mind, but they're releasing some amazing stuff, and it's quite scary. Because they are unbound by, they can use whatever wood they want.
Yeah.
They often will use oak. And again, I think it's actually because the wording of the regulations is quite, it's hard to, when you first read it, it kind of seems as though that you have to also use oak like in Scotland, but you don't. So they're starting to make, similar to Agitator, starting to use other kind of methods that we can't. And I do feel so it's actually on the edge.
My cousin actually brought me whiskey from Wales. I've never had the balls to try it yet, but
Was it the Penderyn?
Penderyn.
Whiskey,
Yeah.
it's really nice. It is good.
He's got 3 bottles and stuff, and I'm thinking, thanks, John. I
Yeah.
didn't mean that like the one, thanks, John. It's always that trepidism because I like what I like.
Yeah, completely. And I think that is what kind of still gives Scottish whiskey a lot of its weight. But like you don't have to try too many before you kind of realise that, just because the whiskey's mature in Scotland doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better. I think Penderyn, they will create a spirit similar to Scottish whiskey, just like quite a lot of these like English distilleries and quite a lot of like Japanese whiskey, not Agitator obviously, but some other Swedish distilleries. They try to emulate the process that we have. And I don't think that's the best. And it's two very similar things, what Scottish whiskey wants not. Most folk will lean towards the Scottish whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
If they do something a little bit different and give themselves up the edge, that again, as I say, some of these English distilleries are doing, they're coming out some unbelievable stuff.
The milk and honey people are a great example of that. So we've got one of them on our on our platform in the minute. And they use hot climate maturation. So it's again doing something completely different, but they're using an Islay cask. So you're getting all that traditional Islay smoke that you'd expect with a completely different 66% whiskey, which packs a punch. No, but we've got that and Stawning on our platform as well. But they're our marketplace contingent as opposed to our independent bottle stuff. But it's lovely to try different things and just see what everybody else has to offer.
It really is, yeah.
Milk and honey, I've got some good stuff.
Yeah, and they just won world's best, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got like a pomegranate finish, something which is quite nice. But again, like interesting, like sort of cool things.
I did that see one.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
No, that's nice. Yeah, I had that at best before. And it is, yeah, obviously, because when you're distilling a really hot, kind of dry climate, the ABV actually goes up and down. Obviously Scotland goes down. As Amy was saying, I think, the one that we've got on our platform is 67%. So like definitely one that it's nice to sip a few at cast strength and add a few drops. But else, yeah, it'll be a short drinking session.
Interesting online with Coleman on their mixed run and different cuts.
Yeah.
That topped out at 71%, but that was dangerously drinkable.
Yeah, it is, and it's through the highs that it's incredible, and it is. You'll drink a few, and then again, it is. You stand up, you walk outside, you don't really realise how much you're drinking. Yeah, exactly. But are you guys ready to move on to the first peated dram tonight?
This is the
chestnut. So yeah, I think this is the one I think I was most interested in gauge your guys' reaction. And anyone tuning online, please tweet us or comment on the bottom of the stream what you think of this if you've not tried it already. So this cask, or should I say this liquid, was distilled in, well, it was actually 14th of November in 2018. I remember that 'cause it was 2 days before my 21st birthday. I didn't know that at the time, obviously, but distilled in November of 2018. And again, just like the 4-grain, it was originally put into a virgin American oak cask before being re-racked into a chestnut cask. So a couple other differences is obviously, as I say, the first dram of the evening is a 4-grain, but the one that we're on just now is a peated single malt. And you'll notice straight off the bat, you're getting that smokiness, but it is not like an Islay smoky whiskey. It does not have that medicinalness, it does not have the TCP. It's got a much more dry, earthy peat to it. It's really, really interesting. And it is, I always describe it as if you were to be presented with it and told it wasn't whiskey. You could almost believe it's not whiskey. It sits somewhere right on the fringe of what you think whiskey is. And I think it just works so well. So obviously chestnut, it brings like a much more, I want to say kind of savoury, but it's sweet and savoury. You're going to get both of those notes through there, but it's like cedaring, again, that cedar root, and also it's like hazelnut. It's, when I first drank it, I thought, it's almost like Ferrero Rocher or like Mattel. That kind of like, that was my first thought when we tried it. And it is just, I'm personally really enjoying this at the moment because it is a wee bit different. Again, it's still peated, I love my peaty whiskies, but it's just not that, again, love Lefroy, but you drink a jar of it and sometimes you just get punched in the face with peat and that's what you can taste. But this, it just kind of sits with the rest of the dram. And it's just due to the type of peat that they use. Peat from Islay will always taste that kind of way because it's predominantly made from like seaweed and stuff like things that have been on the island that have then turned to peat. If you go to the Highlands, for instance, it's mainly heather and vegetation, and that's why it tastes a lot more floral and aromatic.
What food would be good with this from the table?
So quite a few. So tonight we have just there, it is a hazelnut and coffee chocolate. I believe it is this one just here.
We've got a great question coming through from Tim, and I think I know the answer, but I'd like to ask you. So Tim is asking, is the peat from Sweden?
The peat is from Sweden.
Yeah.
It is Swedish peat. Yeah. So similarly to the best, it's slightly different to Highland peat, but I would compare it to Highland peat. So for instance, Isle of Rassay or Namartin, that type of peatiness, whereas it's a little bit more earthy.
Yeah.
And a little bit more floral and aromatic.
It's definitely got the Highland peatiness about it, but it's a completely different flavour from a peaty malt.
It's all about the terrain, and how, where the peat is in the way geographically. So I can imagine there'd be good similarities between the two.
Which is weird. It's not something I ever considered. Like, it's literally what made the peat. Like,
Yeah.
it's literal vegetation and stuff that made the peat affects the flavour.
Yeah.
That's when you realise that it makes perfect sense.
It's got kind of ethereal.
Yeah.
It's not a lingering.
Yes, completely. We spoke about this actually at the Rat Whisky Festival, at Manchester Whisky Festival on the weekend, and we were talking about that as well.
I think it's incredibly warm and it's just very drinkable for a peated whiskey, and it does pack a punch on the nose, but not nearly as much on the palate, I think, and the finish too. Just really, really well balanced.
Completely. It's something that, again, we do a few of these festivals and people kind of come up, and one of the first questions we ask, what dram they want? What do you normally drink? Do you normally peated, fruity whiskies? And often people go, no, not peated, they're not peated. And then they'll get onto that, they'll try it, and they'll be converted. They'll be like, oh, that's really nice. And it is, people think of peat and they'll think of Lefroy, Lagavulin, and stuff. But personally, I'm big fans of both distilleries.
Mm-hmm.
I can see what you get.
So they would serve the dram of Lefroy when they were.
Well,
It wasn't just me.
My grandfather gave me I was 17. And she said, look, then you started drinking this stuff. She was like, bells.
yeah. No.
We had like great responses about the chestnut cask from our industry advisor as well, Alistair Day, who works in conjunction with Isla Rasa Distillery, and like so many people in the industry are big fans of chestnut casks for what flavour it imbues. So it's exciting. It's exciting to be part of the ground floor of that.
Yeah, completely. And it is at the SWA, they are sort of changing some of the restrictions. Like, for instance, you need to be able to use tequila and mezcal casks until quite recently, but we can do that now. And I'm starting to notice a bit of a movement specifically for chestnut casks. Because and actually, I was reading about this. So the oak policy only became a thing, I think, in the 80s, the early 80s. And there was a cask, there is technically a Scottish whisky chestnut cask sitting in one of the distilleries up north that legally now can't be called whisky. And for it to legally be able to be called whisky and bottle it. Because if you were to make this and bottle it here in Scotland, you'd have to call it like a grain-based spirit. And if somebody works in marketing the whisky industry, that would make the job very difficult to try and market a grain-based spirit. But it's like raising some of these restrictions and allowing Scottish distilleries to kind of become a wee bit more crafty, a wee bit more nimble, I think would benefit the whole industry.
I reckon they could still do well in a 1980 bottle before. They could call it what they wanted.
Yeah, no, that's actually a good point.
We've only got a few hundred bottles.
Yeah.
And actually, we can't call whiskey. It's reverse marketing potentially.
Yeah. Well, no, it'd be really interesting to see like what I'd like to see what it tastes like just now.
Yeah.
But I would. I'm not saying they should release all the regulations. Like obviously, it is there to protect the industry in some regard, but it needs to be quick moving. We need to be aware of what other countries are doing with their whiskey production.
We've got comments saying the SWA need to relax.
They do indeed, yeah.
There's ways around things.
Yeah.
There's a wee place just south of the border where if you transported around down there, you would be out with the regulations, but close enough to get back into Scotland very quickly.
Actually, there probably is something like sneaky kind of do, sort of like jumping across. But I think it's like it needs to be distilled, matured, and bottled in Scotland for it to become Scottish whisky. So
But if you've got something that isn't even able to be called whisky, and you take that to, let's say for argument's sake, Berk, do it there.
want to take it back and call it whisky. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you can call it Scottish whisky, but you're right, you can call it whisky. Yeah. But it's like, no, completely.
So that's the engineering and finding a solution.
I like that. No, I actually like that a lot. Yeah.
If anybody would like a second dram, we're more than happy to pour some. Obviously, unfortunately, not for those aren't joining us online, but I'm happy to tip round if anybody has a favourite. Yeah, they're free to take. They're free for all.
It's really reaching you guys still plastic, just for sure.
Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, that's really nice.
It's again so unusual, so different again, and this is 59.6%. So again, just like the wood grain ash there, does not taste the ABV to a dangerous degree.
The smoky flavour stays.
Oh, completely. And again, it's almost like a fire smoky flavour rather than that like medicinal kind of smoky flavour. We were at a whiskey festival a couple of weeks ago and there was a pizza van outside and they were doing wood fire pizzas. And it was the same kind of smell. It was that kind of burning wood smell. And I've got a few friends that every time I try to convert them into whiskey, they'll say, give me something that tastes like a bonfire. And you go, right, okay, you get Lafroig or Kilcoman or something like that. And they'll go, that doesn't taste like what I'm picturing. But something like a Highland peat, that is that more kind of embery kind of flavour. And it's a great dram to get you into peaty whiskies. It's just, yeah, there's a lot you can do with different types of peat to create a completely different profile.
Bonfire now.
Yeah, no, exactly. But it's amazing. It's a quick like,
Yeah, 4 years old.
yeah, the stuff they do is phenomenal. And again, also we really see it's a non-age statement. But like there should be there's a narrative around aged whiskey. And don't get me wrong, a lot of whiskey when it's aged for longer does taste better. But there's more to whiskey than just aging it in a cask. It's proven today, you can get much younger whiskies, a lot more flavour, a lot older whiskies. I've had whiskies upwards of 20 years old that aren't as complex as these two whiskies we're having today, and other whiskies, even from younger Scottish distilleries. Would you like to move on to 21 year old Charlotte? Sorry, Miss Hannah.
No, I was just going to say, just before you go, can you talk about the award that the Chestnut Cask won
Of
for
course
the...
I can. It all happened so fast. Yeah, so we did actually win. So we entered this for correct me wrong, Amy, but it was the
Spirits Business Spring Blind Tasting. So they tasted this without knowing what the wonderful bottle looked like.
but the category we entered it in
It was World Whiskey.
World Whiskey. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we entered this the World Whiskey Awards. We came second. We won a silver award. And again, as I say, or as Amy says, it was complete blind tasting. We sat in front of tens of drams and picked this one out to second best. And to be honest, like it might sound smug, but I can see why it done. Like, it's really nice.
That'd be passably easy for a 10-year-old 9-year-old malt.
Yeah.
Easily, yeah.
Yeah, easy.
That's it. Almost again, if someone said also 25 and showed it just the colour or something, you'd say
Just the colour.
yeah, you'd say yes. Although it's absolutely phenomenal, and we are excited as these are our most recent bottlings. And again, as I said, the Port Charlotte's not been shipping out yet, and these were only bought a couple of weeks ago. So we're excited to enter these a lot more awards. Hopefully, win a lot more awards as well, which would be nice, and especially with the actual design of the bottles as well, because it's something that I'm quite proud of, and we've had quite good reception so far. But yeah, no, thank you very much. But yes, moving on to the final dram, and saving the best for last, or subjectively best for last. This is our 21-year-old Port Charlotte. So Port Charlotte was re-established in 2001, and this cask was one of the casks that was filled in that 12-month period. So as I say, the oldest Port Charlotte on the market, it has now been bottled. So as time passes, some older Port Charlottes may be released. It could be years before any of these 2001 casks are released. So oldest Port Charlotte on the market still. It is up at 60.1%. So for an older whiskey, that is quite high, but they did fill with quite high ABV at the time. And just due to your slight microclimates, the ABV changes differently to even where you are in Scotland. This was originally filled into an ex-bourbon cask. And then in 2008, it was re-racked into a first fill St. Julian ex-Bordeaux red wine. It stayed there for a year. And at that point, St. Julian red wine. So, what year? 2008. So between 2008 and 2009, it sat in that cask. So 12 months.
It wasn't in that cask that we tried.
I hope not.
I'll talk about a legendary day in Bordeaux where me and friends that were there got through 27 bottles of red wine. Some people like irate, but I've got somebody that can actually confirm that.
Yeah. 37, yeah, if you can remember, yeah, 37 says a lot.
It's like 3, that was it. That's a nice dram.
Yeah, no, and
Very delicate on those, actually.
really delicate on the nose. I think it's because the peat just dies down after that while, which I like. And again, so after, so in 2009, it was re-wrapped again back into a different ex-bourbon cask. So it spent its time in 2 separate ex-bourbon casks, and both first fill ex-bourbon casks, and then 1 year in the St. Julian wine barrique. So
It's got a bit of the smell of the sea.
Mm.
It's got a bit of the smell of the outside the gates of the Clary, actually.
yeah, hopefully it is. It's that really like
Maybe that's
maritime.
just me.
Yeah.
No, I love it. You can come in and do the descriptions for the next few. That sounds fab.
you've got sea salt, caramel chocolate.
Yeah, it isn't half, is it?
But it is, I think it's balanced quite well, because it's very like those maritime notes kind of come through, those kind of like seaside notes. But at the same time, it's quite tropical. And I think it's just that combination from the bourbon cask as well as the wine cask. You almost get like that pineapple-ness, bit of mango in there, those kind of tropical fruits coming through. I think balances really well with the softer Isle of Peat.
We're getting notes of white chocolate and wine gums. I'm just going to confirm that's for Port Charlotte, but I think that probably adds up because like the creaminess of it and the kind of, like you say, that not artificial fruitiness that sherry gives, but that kind of that really syrupy sweetness that you get from red wine. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What's the difference in the 16 days of the festival?
It does. Yeah. Almost like physics. Yeah.
Getting one of them popping candy chocolate oranges in your mouth, that's kind of the
Yeah, completely. Prickles. They get like kind of something.
flying saucers.
Yeah, sherbet's quite common, like a quite common tasting note for a variety of different whiskies we've tried actually. So that rings true.
Yeah. Oh, no, definitely. Very sherbet lemons.
Maybe a way of saying that if Craigellachie did a peat in whiskey, it would be very like this.
No, I know what you mean.
I actually know exactly what you mean.
What were your first impressions of the whiskey when we sampled it, Ian?
To be honest, I gotta hit the roof. It's the best whiskey I've ever had. Yes, the Port Charlotte. And to be honest, like normally I say that not all the time, but relatively often. You know, like that's the best whiskey, but it still stays in my top 3 whiskeys. Like of any whiskey, not Caskshare whiskeys, of any whiskeys I've had, this is the top 3.
I've got a PC fanboy, so it's like,
It's
absolutely.
I'm the same.
Smashed out the park.
Yeah, I thanks. I love the 10-year-old. It's such a nice kind of go-to dram. It's not too expensive that you can't justify drinking it. It's a nice kind of special occasion kind of dram. And I think, I could easily get through it.
I jammed the Peat project just in some random tasting kit, and that's what put me on Port Charlotte years ago. That's a unicorn now.
Because to be honest, I mean, I don't think that's as glamorous. I think it was on offer in a Morrison's once. I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. This is where I got to whiskey industry, like maybe about 6 or 7 years ago. And I've never looked back since. I just love, again, it's almost like that Kilcoman level peat. No, it's not overpowering, it's not too punchy. Like some of the sort of 10-year-old is quite strong in its peat, but again, it's just not, there's more going on. It's not just peat. You can taste other things. You can taste other things coming through.
16 was excellent. The festival, but this is
something else.
Different level.
Yeah.
This is a different level.
As a Port Charlotte fanboy, do you think this is the best Port Charlotte?
This is cracking Port Charlotte.
If you could just say that a wee bit louder. I should have had social media live for that. No, people are saying it, definitely like behind all that smoke, lots of sweetness, lots of creaminess, seeing that from people at home.
It's got a smokiness.
It's not massive smoke.
It's not got an overpowering smoke there, is it?
No, not at all.
I think that is, I mean, personally, I think it's the age, and age has brought it down. And so I do think it'd be nice to keep it in the cask so it can always forever be the oldest until we bottle it.
Yeah.
But I think we bought it at the right stage. You know, not just because it's 21 years old, it's quite nice round year for sort of birthday gifting and stuff like that. But like, it's we've got people that was a team, which I think is nice.
So that comes with Brooklyn.
Yes, so most of the time, both of these came from Caskshare Distillery, and this came direct from Brooklyn, and the Dalian came from, it was sold once before, and sold us.
I've got a friend with I work with a cask in Port Charlotte. He's still slithering about exactly how long he's going to keep it. But
How old is that, Eric? Do you know how?
gosh, I think he's coming up to 13 years or something. So he's still on about how long he wants to go.
13.
Yeah. So we'll see.
It's tempting to get a bottle, and
He reckons he's going to keep it to a kind of significant standard, but maybe not quite 22.
I think it depends. I think it is. I mean, it's the same as anything. Sometimes trying to like bottles, and you have it for like a month, 2 months, and until the money you spent on it doesn't really feel like money anymore.
Yeah.
And you kind of just becomes a bottle of whiskey you want to drink,
Mm.
and then you come
Funny,
back.
this might sound nuts, but when you go to buy something now, it isn't the money you're spending. All that happens is a number changes in your bank account because that's a card you're using. So you're not like saying, oh, that's 30 quid, that's 30 quid.
Yeah. Well, they're actually doing studies in terms of tapping a card and hand over money. Like when you hand over money, pain receptors in your brain start triggering. You kind of feel it yourself. When you take out £3 £20 notes in your wallet and give it to someone, that feels way different to tapping your card and 60 quid. You don't get that same feeling of I'm giving money.
Do you know what else you don't do when you use your card? You don't spend as much.
I feel the opposite, to be honest. Yeah, I'm tapping away all the time.
I feel I don't spend as much tapping a card. But that's, I mean, I've got Stuart, I'll tell you, I've got a lot of nice whiskey at home and at holiday home. But it's only because you're going to the supermarket and it's on offer. It's like, it was Old Putney. I bought a couple of bottles of Old Putney. They were 22 quid. What's not it like?
I know, yeah, that's a bargain. That's an absolute steal. And it is in some of these bottles, well, obviously, more commercial area bottles, over 12-year-old stuff, they're never really going to increase too much. Some of these folk are digging at bottles from their attic that they bought ages ago, they were getting and realising it's got £7,000 bottle of whiskey now. It's incredible. Like folk, like I was talking to a guy who he asked for a bottle, I can't remember what distillery it was now, maybe Little Mill, and he found it in a post office. This was after Little Mill shut down, and the guy just didn't know. It was sitting dusty at the back of the post office for like 26 quid or something. So you just like shaking with it, kind of, please have that waiting for the guy to catch up. And he sold it and made a nice profit.
It's a barn phrase, isn't it? It's the new barn phrase. It's this random bottle shop somewhere that's got these dusty things in there. You see them occasionally still. I've found this, is it worth buying? And it's just like, there's like 300 comments saying,
No.
yes, buy it now, buy it now. And by the way, where is it? Is it
Yeah, where do you live? Oh no, it's not. I think I was running a few like whiskey groups on Facebook and stuff, and someone found spring rank or something. And again, same situation. Like they put it on it's on the spring rank page, and it's just worth it. Something standing in a shop, and again it was £49.95, something like that, like 60 quid. And it was like, yes, like you need to buy that now. That's your inheritance. Like it's inheritance.
That's awesome.
Does anyone want any extra drama at all?
We're happy to pour anything. Like this is your night to enjoy. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like anything that's pre-poured, but we're happy to pour you anything.
Which it should be.
Can I just cite my whiskey links who's on there?
Oh, yeah.
He accidentally booked one of these scotches.
Yeah, no, you can pinch his. He's actually just messaging as well. So
I enjoyed them. It was good. I enjoyed them all.
What do you think your favourite was?
Weirdly enough, I think it was my favourite.
Yeah, the W. Yeah.
That was.
he said, haha, cheers, Ben, enjoy.
And that was my least favourite. Was it?
No, see, that's the thing. I mean, obviously, we've got from one end of the spectrum to the other. So, statistically speaking, there's a good chance one of them won't be for you. Joe, you've got super sweet.
I'm not saying that's not for me. I'm just saying
Some are more for you than others.
Other than that bottle of bells that we're talking about.
softer in comparison to them. But I really enjoyed it. And to be that sort of different at 4-year-old is incredible.
It is. I do think it's been a bit discount to that. Like, again, the vacuum distillation. And again, I would need to double check. I feel as though it's something that we can't do, or at least can't do easily in Scotland with SWA wheels. I think there's something to do with, it's like vacuum stills. We normally made of steel rather than copper. We use copper stills. There's something.
No, you're bang on.
If you
Yeah.
I think vacuum a copper, so if you did it would compress.
That's yes, exactly. So that's
Yeah, no, if we just
You have a super thick copper. And in that case, it's just.
I don't even think it would work because coppers are very, very soft.
That's still going to be soft slightly, isn't it?
So it is going to move.
over time at least it'll change shape.
It's going to change
Yeah.
shape with each distillation anyway.
Yeah, because it is. I mean, like they don't have like a this percent or anything at agitator. It's kind of see why, because it is. Their stills are just they look like
It's not to be much romance about
It's
this.
not- yeah, no, not at all. It literally just look like two big fringes beside each other.
Mhm.
But and apparently they're quite difficult to run. I think they're easier to run when you get it up and running. You can just run it constantly. But I think, you know, as you can imagine, you know, you turn the vacuum on, the pipes get full of foam, you know, as it all kind of like air kind of comes out of it. And I think it's more prone to issues. But when you get it up and running, it's easier to use and it's unbelievable.
Compare what they're doing there to a closed couple heating system. Whereas when you put the hot water through it and it's hot, but the water isn't as hot as what makes the ambient temperature.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. You're not actually having to get it as hot as you would. Yes, yeah.
I thought I had vacuum, so that's scenario as well.
I don't want to be standing in front of one when it goes by.
I was having it all explained to me a few weeks ago, and I was like, yeah, what's the fail-safe? They did reassure me there was a real fail-safe, that was an absolute fail-safe.
Well, my view in these things as I'm an electrical engineer, but I worked in the water industry for 30 years. The only way you can guarantee the integrity of a water tank is if it's pressed once there are no welds on it.
What's it, one cast?
Yeah. If it's cast and there's no welds on it, there's less chance of a rupture on it. But because of the nature of
you can't
making them, there will be some form of weld or
because that pressing doesn't really lend itself to a massive vacuum, so you need some cylinder vents on it, really. So
you need your, and you'll have a weld on your input as well.
Yeah.
On your output. So that's weak points. And regardless of what say, a vacuum is massive pressure.
I have another question. So again, I think I've answered it, but I just want to check. So casks are aged normally by agitator. Presumably, the flavour comes from the vacuum distillation and the unique choice of cask type, I suppose, as opposed to them doing anything or treating the cask in a different way or keeping them underground, which is a question that we've got. I think semi-seriously, but I'd love to know.
I think that there's,
Well,
there's obviously lots of different, facts in the production method that would change the final outcome. But the main two facts that are changing these two agitators that we have is cask type and distillation process. There's other sort of subtle nuances and stuff that agitator will do, I'm sure. But the reason it's so jam-packed with flavour is almost exclusively coming from the vacuum distillation and the choice of casks. But I long for the day that you get the notification to say that the SWA will release relax a few rules and we can start using cool cast. I'm not saying everything. But yeah, fingers crossed. Every morning I wake up, I'm checking.
You go there first.
Yeah.
Do you know if agitators make one new make? So that's the same new make that's gone into two different casts that produces two different bottles?
So not necessarily. So the difference would be, so as far as I'm aware, they make one, so like a peated single malt and non-peated single malt and a 4 grain. Yeah, so that would be the only difference. However, you're like I know what you mean in terms of like Hollywood Distillery, for instance, making lots of different types of new make and some other distilleries as well. Not aware of them. The only difference coming here is just one's the 4 grain.
They're very small batch, I think, at the minute. I don't think they're sitting on like heaps of new make in the way that other people have maybe done. I think they're very lean and nimble because of short lead time. So like any Scotch distillery, they're always having to do it. Like you're having to plan 10, 12 years in advance. But for agitator, it's like a much shorter. I think they're able to be a lot more lean and sustainable.
Different yeasts and different barleys and stuff. Really
It's a sustainable future, isn't it? Like buying for production, selling for production, like.
And I do know all these variations in new makes do come from the restrictions around what you can do with cast types and stuff. And obviously, the difference between a sherry cask and an ex-bourbon cask or a wine cask is very different. And I know there's some distillers that experiment with different, more unusual types of oak. One that springs to mind would be like Brassic Trinket. It is oak. It's really, really soft. So actually quite similar to the chestnut in terms of you get a lot of colour, a lot of flavour really quickly. But again, it's completely different in the style. You can easily tell the difference between 2 drams. But I think a lot of this difference in new makes, different yeast types in one distillery comes from the fact that they can't really experiment with more unusual types of wood.
Well, I don't know, open to discussion, but I suppose McMyra apparently distill their stuff in caves. Whether marketing or truth, like, do you think that adds, or what do you think that adds to the process?
So there's a lot of elements about whiskey that is marked. I personally, where your water comes from.
We're still good pals with McMahon, so it's fine.
Yeah, the weather when it was distilled or whatever it is. But yeah, I do feel, I remember I wrote way back when I first started, like I wrote a blog on, I'm not started here, started the whiskey industry. I wrote like a journal on Myra and maturing caves. I think it was because, and I might be wrong, it's a few years ago, there was something about they found champagne casks in a cave, and then so it was like a famous singer or something. This could be a fever dream, but like no, there was a famous singer and his friend, and they went to a cave, and there was these champagne casks matured, and then that's what started the idea for the distillery. Like, I'm sure there's a few conversations that happened in between.
Well,
It's
the pressure and the water.
Do I or
No, I do.
Oh.
It's because, this is going to sound nuts. If you put something under the ground, your
Constant temperature.
it stays at constant temperature. Very rarely changes to, like, if you go 25 feet below the soil, build a bit, it will stay roughly 60 Ts.
all right.
So that's one of the reasons, they call them wine cellars, because
What a good idea.
Has to be matured, like, or has to be in a cave. So these cava means
Yeah.
cave in Spanish.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm loving this.
My brain immediately went to like, is it folk? I don't know, like, is it for folk hiding it or something? Is it like people have stolen casks?
No, it's a pure process. Just you don't get those temperature spikes.
Right. Okay. Well. Yeah. No. There you go. Every day's a story.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, with large warehouses, you get different temperature spikes depending on how far your cask is up or down.
if you've
Yes.
got a cask sitting on the ground bottom, it's going to be a hell of a lot cooler than the one sitting top 15 above it.
Well, it isn't it? It changes the flavour profile, and it is. And like, so for instance, we've got 3 casks from Ardnamurchan. So the first one fully sold out, and that sold out a year or so ago. So it's 3 casks filled on the exact same day. They're stored. So it's actually they're called 706, 707, 708P. So they're literally ours filled one after the other. They're stored in different areas of the warehouse. So I sampled the 6-year-old when it was bottled last October. Some of October just past the October before. And then we got samples through for 707P. And I just assumed it would taste similar to the 706, but a slightly more of that wood influence.
Yeah.
No, completely different. And it isn't just because it was stored one end of the warehouse to the other, and it's incredible.
One question online, and I think I know the answer, but I want to check. So, was the agitator chestnut aged completely in chestnut, or was it previously in ex-bourbon?
It was previously in a Virgin American oak cask.
That's what I thought, for a very short period of time, presumably.
For less than 2 years, about 18 months.
Right. Okay.
And then it was in re-wrapped in chestnut. So the majority of the maturation has been in chestnut, but there was time when it was first filled, it was put to a Virgin American oak cask.
Cool. Perfect. And there's a few people complaining of a cold, and they've just had a sip of the Port Charlotte and said they're going to have to save that for later. It's too good to waste.
One of the things that there is, not much more than a couple of tasting packs still remaining. So if anyone wants to grab an additional tasting pack, a friend or something, you should be able to grab them on the My Collective page just beside where you just now.
This is over again.
I think we should probably, unless anybody has any questions online, we should probably wrap up the online event. So if you just want to let people know like where this is available, just going to wrap up the online one. If you want to let people know where you can catch up and stuff like that.
Yeah, so obviously this whole thing will be recorded and it will be on the My Collective page where you'll be able to watch it at your leisure. It will stay there indefinitely. Like as I say, there's a few packs left where you can grab a few more packs if you wish. Even when the packs are gone in the next couple of days, the video will stay there the whole time. People can catch up. Obviously, all our bottles are fully exclusive to Caskshare, so you only get them through the Caskshare platform. There should be, actually there won't be just now, but if you jump into the shop section, there should be the first 4 casks that crop up. The 3 bottles here on my right, so the 2 agitated value, are shipping now, and as of, fingers crossed, Friday, the Port Charlotte is also shipping. But thanks everyone so much for joining online. It was really good for you to spend your Wednesday evening with us virtually, drinking the whiskies. Please continue to put any more thoughts or anything on either the Facebook comment or tweet us or post on our Instagram. And yeah, we'd love to know what you think. And yeah, hope you had a good time. Sandra.
And as well.
Okay, thanks. But do feel free to hang around